Hi, you're listening to One Time You Told Me. I'm your host, Randy Mays, and I'm here with my co-host, Jen. We're in our multi-dollar studio putting the finishing touches on today's show, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, we're back. Episode number 2. I'm Randy, and I'm here with Jen.
Hi.
And how you doing this week?
Good.
Good. In the first episode, we talked about news snippets and bringing some things that interest us, not necessarily the big headline news that's out there, because you can get that anywhere. Mm-hmm. But what interests us? And there's been some stuff going on that's at least got us conversing.
Yeah.
So tell me about what got you excited within the realm of news these days.
Well, my favorite thing right now is the JWST, which stands for the James Webb Space Telescope.
Yep. Okay.
Which started with just, for me, it's like looking at the Sistine Chapel. Like the pictures coming from it, just truly gorgeous. I encourage anyone listening to go to NASA's site and go look at the JWST page.
Well, for YouTubers, we'll put a link.
Yeah.
Up there?
Because it's incredible. But aside from just like the beauty of it, it's kind of just all around incredible. It is a space telescope taking pictures of what's actually out there.
Right.
It's not just, artist rendition.
Yep.
And it's taking pictures of kind of the same things that we've seen before in a whole different, perspective.
Well, make a pun out of it, a whole different light.
Yeah, kind of quite literally, right?
But you're going to have to explain that now.
Yes. So the Hubble and the telescopes that we have here on Earth cannot see in the kind of a light that JWST is capturing, which is infrared and near-infrared spectra. So from all the way from like our visible orange and red light all the way down past below a wavelength that we can see with our eyes. Right?
Okay. All right.
So, and those wavelengths are so long that the light coming that we're reading, that we're observing on the telescope is very, very old.
Or at least we're able to pick up light older than we've been able to see before.
Yes. It's the oldest light that we're able to capture because light has one speed, right? It's the speed of light.
Right.
So the different wavelengths make it so that we can see different ages, I guess.
It travels further on the same amount of energy, if you will. So the light that we can get, the lower the light level, the lower the wavelength, the older it can be, and we can still see it.
If you think of like an actual like string, right?
Yep.
The distance between the top of the curve to the top of the curve is much, much longer. So it can literally go farther. Yeah.
On the same amount of energy.
Exactly.
Right. So we can see further back in time, really.
Yes.
And we're not going to get into that one because that could take 2 episodes to explain.
It really, really could. But it does mean that we're able to see, with this telescope, stars 100 times dimmer than we've ever been able to see before.
Wow.
And
not that we couldn't see enough, right?
Right? But 100 times dimmer. So the darkest of the dark picture, when Hubble pointed that...
Yeah.
That
1 inch
darkest
image in the sky.
The darkest pixel in the sky, and they found thousands and thousands of galaxies.
Yeah.
Well, imagine that 100-fold.
It's amazing.
And that's what JWST is.
And correct me if I'm wrong, are they not targeting to go back to the beginning of the universe as far as visible light is concerned, or the light that this thing is able to pick up? So
one of the 3 main goals when we, us as humanity, as it were, launched this was to look at the beginning of the galaxy as close to the Big Bang as we can possibly get, and kind of study the formation of how those baby galaxies are working, and how that will be in reference to the Milky Way and how it works.
Right.
And all of the things that we can learn and study from that. The other 2 things that we launched it for were to find potential life on any and all exoplanets, and to look at just kind of early stars in general, regardless of where they are.
Well, in let me back up to the exostar. We also were looking for those, exoplanets. We're looking for those exoplanets.
Yes, we are. We're looking for things that have never been able to be seen with any of the other technology we have because it doesn't see in that light range.
Right.
And the infrared, it's not that light is any weaker per se, but the stars and like the planets and the things, the celestial bodies as they were, that get born from those lower, cooler as it were, energy sources aren't visible in those higher spectrums.
Right.
So,
because that energy never gets here.
Exactly. So, and the infrared light can travel through things like dust clouds and debris and things like that. So we're literally able to see through like what would be a space mountain, right?
Right.
You know, all this like compound dust, we can't see through it with Hubble. We just took a picture and there's thousands upon thousands of stars behind all that dust.
Right.
You know, or inside of all that dust.
Millions, really, probably, but
yeah, I mean, I can't comprehend how many.
It is mind-boggling sometimes to think about some of the stuff that comes out of these things, and how insignificant we are.
Right? It makes us. We're just nothing but space dust with consciousness.
Yeah.
You know, which is just that in and of itself I could spiral for several episodes on.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't we not learn? You were mentioning something that they learned about the age of what they thought.
Yeah. So what JWST was launched in early 2021. So it has not been in the sky for that long. But the data that we have collected from it, we tried to look as close to the Big Bang as possible. And the quote that got me was one of the scientists said that they walked in expecting to find kindergarten-aged galaxies and saw teenagers.
Wow.
So they essentially have doubled the age of the universe.
They put all of this time and effort into developing a technology to see back to where they thought they needed to see, and Mother Nature said, funny, it's much further back.
Yeah, essentially. Or like, hey, we can see this far, and the age range should be toddler, but guess what? They're growing 8 times faster than you thought, and now you get to throw all your science at the wall and figure out what sticks. So
right.
it's truly incredible.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, you and I from time to time have gotten some really deep space discussions, pardon the pun, although not necessarily unintended. And I always come away from them is just how do you wrap your head around this? I mean, just to a large degree, we never will.
No, I mean, and that's what makes it so fun and cool and just beautiful at the end of the day. Yeah. It truly is. And I do mean, like, these pictures for me, and this is a story for another time, I bought lots of prints of these pictures. I was gonna ask you about that. 18 to be specific.
Yep.
And it is my Sistine Chapel. It's just so gorgeous, and it's real.
I remember you calling me saying, what did I just do?
That's a story for another day, but that's one hell of an impulse buy on my behalf.
Well, you could almost make the same correlation to what the folks at NASA do.
Yeah.
It's, hey, let's do this. Oh, crap, what did we just do?
Yeah. Much higher stakes, though.
Much, yes. But the benefits are going to be...
incredible.
Yeah.
And
that's that is also part of another topic. And when we have longer time is, why do this? Why do the space stuff? And to segue, a lot can be said about a lot of things that mankind does. Racing is one of them. A lot of people are like, why do this? And I will say the same thing I do about the space program. There's so much that we have benefited as a society that comes out of the development of technology for going into space or racing. I mean, racing technology has literally saved the lives of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people over the years, because racers kind of want to stay alive.
Yeah.
And they also want to push the edge to crashing.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
where the
I mean,
investment comes from. Is
the guy who wins the race is the one who could get the closest to crashing and didn't.
yeah,
And
exactly.
sometimes he or she did.
I mean,
You know.
there's a reason that everybody in NASCAR knows Dale Earnhardt's name.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely.
But so you follow along on those kinds of
Yeah,
technological advances.
one of the things
often.
we didn't mention in episode 1 is I'm a car guy. I'm a car guy who can't afford to be a car guy, which I think speaks to about 90% of us. But yeah, I
Car
am
girl here.
Yeah, and a friend of mine is really well connected in some areas, and got invited to look at the new. The 2025 Mustang GTD is what they're calling it.
Mm-hmm. And that's different than just a Ford Mustang.
It's not a Ford Mustang. It's actually built by a company called Multimatic,
Okay.
which is in Ontario. I just recently learned. Surprises me a little bit. And they're the same company that's building the latest version of the Ford GT.
Oh, okay.
And for anybody who doesn't know what the Ford GT is, or the GTD is now, the Mustang GTD is now published.
Pause here and go look.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll try and put some links again on the opening page. But if you're interested in cars, this is some interesting stuff. And coming from a guy who's not a Ford guy necessarily.
Yeah, no.
I if it's got 4 wheels or even 3 wheels and is self-propelled, I'm kind of interested. But
Ford hasn't always been your
Ford
favorite.
I'm a GM guy. It's you hear the old Ford Chevy argument, and that's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. But this is a pretty interesting looking car.
Yeah, it is.
And it's let me go over some of the basics again. It's 2025. It is going to be preceded by which I believe is out, or at least you can order it, the 2024 Mustang Dark Horse and Dark Horse Premium, which is a bells and whistles package, but it's
named appropriately.
It focuses on hot rod and on power and handling and all stuff like that. So, which is what the Ford purists want, similar to a Corvette or what have you. Mm-hmm. They're only going to make about 2,000 of these things.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's north of $300,000.
Wow. I mean, makes sense for who's making it,
yes.
But still.
And it's the reality of it is and the person that I know is going to drive it.
Well, yeah.
That's what he does. He drives cars.
That's who they're inviting to the first round of people. Is people they think are really going to appreciate it.
We're going to appreciate it, but not necessarily drivers. A lot of for the Ford GTs, a lot of them are sitting in museum, not necessarily museums, but in someone's collection.
Yeah.
And they don't get driven, which in my mind is a bit of a crime. There are some cars out there that, okay, you don't drive them, or you shouldn't very often. But God, a Ford GT, man,
I'm with you on that. Cars should be driven. That is why they have engines.
A lot of these Mustangs won't be. I'm sure a lot of the ones will get put away into collectors' collections and stuff like that. And it's to each his own.
Right.
It's art.
Yep, you can't tell somebody what to do with their toy.
Right. Anyhow, it's a lot of people were hypothesizing when this thing was a rumor that it was going to be a hybrid, which is like the direction the Corvette is going. The Corvette is all gasoline powered now, but it will wind up with electric motors to make it even more powerful. This is going to be a 5.2 liter, fairly typical size, supercharged, 800 horsepower V8.
Wow.
800 plus.
Wow.
And they're mating it with an 8-speed transaxle, which is different than a transmission. Transaxle, in this sense, given that this is the conventional, the engine's in the front and the drive wheels are in the back. They call it a longitudinal, I'm brutalizing that word, drivetrain.
Okay.
Which is the conventional, been around for decades and decades and decades.
What is
transaxle as opposed to front-wheel drive, which is the other way. Transaxle means that the transmission is at the drive wheels.
Oh, interesting.
So typically with a rear-wheel drive car, you have the engine and the transmission and then a drive shaft that goes back to the differential and the rear end, and that's what drives the rear wheels. Okay. This has got the engine, a bell housing assembly, and probably what they're going to call a torque tube. That's typically what you do.
I think you've lost me.
Engine, drive shaft to transmission, and the transmission is at the rear.
Okay.
And they do that for weight distribution.
Oh, so it's
But
going to be really well balanced.
They want to, the closer you can get to 50-50 weight distribution, the better the car handles.
Yeah, which means it's going to not only be fast, but it's going to be smooth and fast.
Well, the reality of it is, it's a race car in street trim.
Yeah.
That's street legal.
Which just begs the question, where do you drive these? I mean, I know where I would drive but like...
In looking at pictures of this thing, it looks like they're going to make it streetable. And I was really surprised to learn...
but like, traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, like...
There is that.
We're sitting in one of the worst cities in the world for traffic.
But you know what? And I can say this from my days of the Fiero, which I truly miss... although it's sitting out there in the driveway waiting for TLC,
Needs
which is
money for refurbishment.
tender loving cash.
Yeah.
You don't have to be driving the car to its limits or to its extremes to enjoy driving it.
Yeah, no. And I am I think I'm very much in the few percentage of people that knows that.
Yeah.
One of my hobbies is to literally go joyride.
Yep.
But I've known many people who, when I tell them that, they look at me like I'm crazy, you know?
Yeah.
So
well, it's within my own family, there is an extreme ends of drive because it's really fun to do, et cetera, and drive because you got to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And I don't critique any sides or anywhere in between of it.
Yeah.
It is to each to each his own. But I can look at this Mustang and say it looks streetable. There are some supercars and hypercars out there that, after you've driven it once or twice, the last thing you want to do is try and drive it out on the street.
Right.
Because they're very hard to drive. But, you know, the buddy was telling me about his GT, and he says, amazingly enough, it's a very easy car to drive on the street.
Wow. I mean,
visibility is a little difficult, but
I'm sure. It also doesn't help that most of the people, for some reason, most of the people I actually see driving these are like 6 foot tall and don't fit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why they do that to supercars. They make them for like tiny people.
Yeah.
And I don't get why. I mean, I do get why, but like also understand your market.
The way you want the car to look lends itself to smaller people.
Yeah.
You know, low and sleek.
But just like basketball players buy fancy cars, and you'll see pictures of them having to like scrunch themselves into the fetal position to get inside the door.
Yep.
And that will always make me giggle as a 5'2" person. You know?
Yep. So anyhow, that Ford released that information recently that the car is coming out 2025 or late 2024 is when they think they'll have it out on the streets.
And we'll probably have more discussion when it's out and about in their pictures.
Yeah, and you know, there will be some in our area.
Yeah, there will be, which is
so
exciting.
Yeah, and more than one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That second part's a bit of a guess, but I'm, you know, there's and we're going to wrap this up, but at Redmond Town Center, there is a throughout certain months of the year, they're done for the year, a car show. They call it Exotics at Redmond Town Center.
And not just like your normal classic car show, but like
there's
exotic.
A wide variety of stuff.
Yeah.
Wide variety of things. You'll from simple little old Peugeots to supercars.
Yeah. Some of the most unique cars in the world have been there.
Yeah. And I've been going down more and more and just getting to know some people who are down there on a regular basis and finding that there is a larger community of car enthusiasts and extremists, if you will, in this area than I ever began to imagine.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people around here who have some pretty interesting collections of vehicles.
Yeah.
And,
I think I grew up a little more in that crowd than you ever expected. And I think I definitely hit it a little bit more than, I mean, I was a teenager going to races and things like that. So
yeah,
I hit it from you a little bit, but
there's even more than that. There's the guy who, you know, who's got, you know, like at this Redmond Town Center show once, 3 Ferrari LaFerraris were there.
Yeah,
these are multi-million-dollar cars, and this guy had 3 of them at the show, and that wasn't all he owned.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
And
I didn't necessarily know those people, but I knew people who are now like those people's assistants,
right.
You know?
And those are cars from Ferrari that you have to be invited to buy.
Yeah.
And this guy's got more than one.
Yeah.
So anyway, that in itself is mind-boggling. Not nearly as much as space, but
No, but it's some pretty. It's some cool
Yeah.
ish out there, you know.
Yeah. So that's our take on, well, sort of news.
Our interests.
Very narrow snippets.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're also ever really want to get into the broad, drama-filled. You can get that in so many places. You get so many places you shouldn't be getting it from.
Yeah, you probably won't find it here.
No.
We're gonna try to avoid that.
Yep. Sorry, guys, if you're looking for news.
We're not the drama center.
Not the drama center. Facebook. Go to Facebook.
Yep.
Get your news from Facebook.
Exactly.
So that's this segment of this show. There should be more to come. Okay, so what do you got next for me?
So I was walking past the balloon aisle in the store the other day. You know, the rise to the ceiling type.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of one time you told me that you on a fire call had some trouble with some balloons rising to the ceiling, and it caused quite the night.
Yes, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were the volunteers shared a station with the truck company, and at nighttime we would run the engine company. They would run the truck and the aid car, and we went out on an automatic fire alarm at a church, a small church in the neighborhood. Meaning
it got tripped by sensors, not a person, right?
Well, at the time we didn't know. Back then we didn't. We got very little information. Dispatch just told us, "Hey, this is a fire alarm going off. This is where you're going." And so we get there, and it's about 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, and we're greeted by a couple of people. I was a little surprised. There was a few people at the church still. And
night.
Yeah, well, it was a Friday night, and they were setting up for a wedding the next day. Turns out we get in there, and they're getting all decked. The place is being all dressed up for a wedding.
So balloons were appropriate.
And there were balloons. And something I didn't know at the time, this is educational for me, is you can't just put a smoke detector up at the top up there. I mean, you can, but it gets problematic. So what they do is they call it a broken beam detector.
Okay.
When they have a long pathway, if you will, in a ceiling that is peaked.
Big open space.
Yeah, well, but it's got to have that peak. That's important for where all the smoke focuses to. If the smoke rises, it's not on a flat surface. It goes up to
Okay.
Then you put a transmitter, an infrared transmitter on one end, and an infrared sensor on the other, and if smoke goes up and fills that peak up, it breaks that beam, and that sets the alarm off.
Right.
And they do that because it takes very little smoke coming from anywhere in that room to break that beam, because it gets all concentrated at the peak. And so we get in there, and the alarm's going off, and a couple of guys go off from the truck company because we're on the engine, they're on the truck, and we're basically assisting them. The truck company was the primary on an automatic fire alarm like that. We're assisting them, so we're hanging out. And they go off the alarm panel, they silence the alarm, and they come back, and we're looking up, and this, one of the captain, I think, off the truck says, "Okay, so we got to figure out how to get rid of these balloons." And I'm like, "What?" And he says, "Well, that's what tripped the alarm." He explains to me what a broken beam sensor is. It makes total sense to me.
Because he's looking up, seeing that space filled with balloons.
Yeah, and there's half a dozen balloons up there, and the people who were putting the church together were falling all over themselves with apologies. And we're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, And it happens. And so, but this cathedral it's tall.
So not the easiest to get.
Maybe not quite that tall,
down.
but it's up there. It's a ways up there. Maybe 40, 50 feet, but it's not grab a ladder.
Right.
And you got a bunch of balloons that don't have any strings on them.
Because that'd be too easy.
Yeah, they're just up there. So one of the guys off the truck company, I think it was off the truck company, came up with an idea that he had seen before. And he asked for some masking tape and some pins.
Oh, okay.
And he wadded up the masking tape into the size of just a small ball, and started putting pins through it in certain areas, leaving room to be able to grab it, but making the pins stick out so that no matter when you'd throw this thing at the balloons,
spiky ball,
no matter how it hit the balloon, it would pop. There'd be a pin to pop the balloon.
Yep, spiky ball.
Yeah. The problem was getting it to the balloon.
What, you guys didn't have pro athlete arms?
Well, you couldn't grab them like baseballs unless you had, unless you were that kind of warped, demented person who liked the pain. So you kind of had to just put your fingers around it and carefully grab it and throw it, and it was hard.
Yeah.
But, one by one, and I won't say we made a game of it because, professionals.
I mean, but firefighters at 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
No fun at all to be had.
Well, the reality is we had to get them down, we had the balloons down, because the alternative was they post a fire watch, which means someone had to be there the whole night.
Yep.
Awake, making sure the place didn't catch on fire.
Yep.
And so, we could have just said, post a fire watch, we're going back to the station. But we didn't. We said, we'll help you out. We'll get rid of these balloons and get the alarm reset, and you guys should be good to go. No more balloons. So we spent probably the next 30, 45 minutes, throwing this spike ball at the balloons. And, again, I won't say it was a game, but it became a game.
I mean, how could it not?
Well, yeah, and I don't know who was keeping score, but someone kept score. And eventually we got them all down. The last one, a big hurrah. Okay, let's again, half an hour, 45 minutes later.
Which means your problem's over, right?
Well, that was the idea. So we're all proud of ourselves, patting each other on the back, and we all head off to, at least a few of us, and the captain on the truck company, for some reason, liked me. So he had me come along. I wasn't quite a rookie yet, but I was still kind of new. So he, come on, let's go take a look at the fire alarm.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the captain, a gentleman by the name of Mike, his driver, my officer, and myself, and I think the custodian of the church.
Okay.
Maybe one of the other people that was there with the church. And we're in this fire alarm panel. It's not a big room, 10 by 10 maybe. And he's, the custodian who's operating the panel is also, he's hitting the reset, and it's not resetting.
Mm-hmm.
And he's looking at it, and Mike looks over it and goes, okay, so yeah, we're still showing a trip, an alarm, or a sensor trip in the chapel.
Mm.
And I said, Mike? He goes, yeah. We weren't in the chapel.
Oh, no.
The whole room went dead silent.
Because you were in a different C-named room.
Everyone's mind went to the exact same place mine did for a split second of, oh my God, think of the headlines.
Yeah.
Firefighters play catch with a spiked tape ball as church burns.
So good. So good.
So,
you're so lucky. TikTok wasn't around.
He looked at me and says, what? And I said, we weren't in the chapel. We were in the cathedral. The chapel is a different room. And the custodian goes, well, yeah, the chapel's over here.
Yeah.
Now, we all quickly realized.
Slight but important difference.
It is, but had that much time progressed and there had been something going on anywhere else in the building, it would have become obvious that there was a serious problem going on. So we knew that there wasn't likely a fire. Maybe some smoke built up somewhere or something like that. But so we all hurry along and get to the better get to the chapel.
Tail between the legs and everything.
Yeah, and we got there, and it was a malfunctioning sensor, and unfortunately, they meant that they had to have they couldn't get a tech out that night, so they had to bring in a fire watch, and someone had to spend the night there making sure the place didn't burn down. But that moment of
and you guys had to destroy balloons.
We weren't in the chapel.
Oh.
Just the dead silence that came about us, and I could just see on everybody's face the same look of, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't speak too much about that the next day.
Nobody wanted to fess up.
Yeah, after the next couple of weeks, it became a humorous story.
Yeah, because firefighters were playing with a spike ball. Like that alone. And then you add that it wasn't for the right reason.
It was a clever fix. I thought it was when he first brought it up. I thought that's pretty clever. It's a good way to get the balls down or the balloons down. I don't know. We had to get them down.
I can't say I would have thought of anything better.
And the reality of it is, they would have had to come down anyway because we were not resetting the alarm had they been up there. Now we couldn't reset it anyway, but so it wasn't a fruitless effort.
Sure.
But it did have that aha moment, or the moment, that was kind of a not something you experience every day. And the combination of helium balloons and a fire call is not...
Yeah, it's not a common one.
No.
No,
by any stretch of the imagination.
And you learned what is that, beam break?
The broken beam alarm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, that's one fire department story down.
Yeah.
Many to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I must admit, I got to start making some phone calls to some of my friends and, hey, tell me what I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
What are your stories? And some people I want to interview. At some point in time as well, because there's some other people out there in the fire department that I served with that have some interesting stories all into their own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Kind of an interesting one. Space telescopes, street legal race cars, and balloons in churches.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, that's today's show. This is Randy.
I'm Jen. And this has been One Time You Told Me. Make sure to check out the links in the description below for NASA and the Mustang GTD. And come back for more stories like this.